Okay. Usually when we start these deep dives, we like to ease into a bit, set the table, maybe do a little historical preamble, kind of warm up the vocal cords.
Yeah, a little bit of context first.
Exactly. But today, I think we really have to start right at the top. We have to start with the massive, flashing neon headline that basically broke the internet.
It really did. It's one of those headlines that just stops you mid-scroll. You have to click on it.
Britney Spears has sold her entire music catalog.
Just saying it out loud feels heavy. Feels like a seismic shift in pop culture.
It does. I mean, we are talking about the Princess of Pop here. This soundtrack to millions of childhoods, mine very, very much. And just like that, signed, sealed, delivered.
It's gone. Or at least the control is.
Right, it's gone from her hands. But the more I looked into the sources we have today, and we are pulling from some really detailed reporting, specifically a breakdown from Pop Culture Crisis, some heavy legal documents, and financial analysis from Variety. This isn't just about Britney getting a check.
No, not at all. That's the surface level story. That's the TMZ headline.
Right. It sounds so simple on the surface. Artists sell songs, artists gets a ton of money all the time now. But when you actually peel back the layers here, it feels like this deal is a gate. It's a doorway into a much larger and frankly, a slightly terrifying conversation about ownership in the modern world.
It absolutely frames a discussion that goes way beyond Baby One More Time. It's about the difference between owning your work and owning the royalty stream from that work.
Which are two very different things, as we're about to find out.
Exactly. It's also about the economics of cashing out when an industry has, completely ground you down. And if we connect the dots like we plan to do today, it connects Britney Spears to everything from the Chicago parking meter system to a dad getting yelled at for filming his kid playing hockey.
I love when we can make those weird connections. It sounds like one of those conspiracy theory boards with the red string, but it's actually just economics.
It all comes back to who owns what.
So here is our mission today. We need to unpack this deal. We need to figure out exactly what Britney sold because, spoiler alert, it is not what you think it is.
Not at all.
We need to look at why she might have done it. Math, is it psychology, or is it, something closer to desperation? And then we are going to zoom out to this broader societal shift where it really feels like everything is getting consolidated.
Exactly. We are moving from a world of individual ownership to a world of corporate access and subscriptions. And this deal is a perfect microcosm of that entire trend.
So let's get into the weeds. Let's really unpack the Britney deal. First things first, who bought it and for how much?
Okay, so the buyer is a company called Primary Wave. Now, if you're not deep in the music business, you might not know that name, but they're a massive player in this specific space.
Primary Wave. I feel like I've heard that name pop up more and more lately.
You have. They aren't a traditional record label like a Sony or a Universal. They're more of a branding and publishing company. They've been on a shopping spree, just aggressively buying up catalog for years now.
They're the ones scooping everything up.
They are. And according to the sources, specifically, we're looking at estimates from Variety and TMZ here. The deal is in the low nine figures.
Low nine. I always love that terminology. It sounds so casual for such an insane amount of money.
Right. Like pocket change.
So we're talking somewhere around the $100 million mark. Is that a fair assumption?
Likely right around that $100 million mark. Yes, that's the consensus figure.
Okay, let me just pause you there because I feel like I see these numbers fly by on Twitter or on the news ticker and I lose all context. My brain just can't process what $100 million even means. But I do remember Justin Bieber doing a similar deal.
He did. He sold his catalog to a company called Hypnosis Songs Capital, which is another one of these big players.
And did he get significantly more than that? I want to say I read somewhere that he got 200.
That's the correct number, yeah. Bieber's deal was reported to be around $200 million.
So, okay, help me understand the math here. Britney Spears is a global icon. Her career spans decades. She is culturally ubiquitous. I mean, you can go to a karaoke bar in Tokyo or a wedding in Des Moines, and I guarantee you're hearing a Britney song.
Absolutely. No question.
So why did she get half of what Bieber got? Is that a sign that her brand is, damaged? Or is there something wrong with the valuation? What's going on there?
It's a fantastic question, and it brings us right to the most misunderstood part of this entire story. It comes down to the boring, gritty details of what was actually sold.
The fine print.
The fine print. There is this huge misconception that when an artist sells their catalog, they're walking into a vault somewhere, taking the master tapes off a shelf and handing them over in a briefcase.
Right, like the whole Taylor Swift situation. Okay. That's what we all learned about. The whole reason she re-recorded her albums was to own her masters. So I just assumed Britney was doing the same thing, selling the tapes.
And that's a totally logical assumption. Mm-hmm. But in Britney's case, she couldn't sell the masters.
Why not?
Because she never owned them.
Oh, okay. So that changes everything.
It changes the entire equation. She is selling something she doesn't fully control in that sense.
I see.
Well, to be precise, she can't sell the recording copyright. Sony Music owns and controls her entire recorded music catalog. That was just standard operating procedure for pop stars of the late 90s and early 2000s. The label fronts all the money for the videos, the promotion, the recording.
They take all the financial risk up front.
All. And in exchange, they own the tapes. They own the masters. So Britney didn't have the masters to sell to Primary Wave, even if she wanted to.
Okay, so if she doesn't own the tapes and Sony still has them, what exactly did Primary Wave just pay $100 million for? What are they buying?
They bought her artist royalties and her publishing right. And this is where we really need to distinguish between the two, because it's absolutely critical to understanding the money and that valuation difference.
Okay, break it down for me. Like, explain it to me like I'm 5. What is the difference between an artist royalty and a publishing?
Okay, think of a song like a pie, a big, delicious, money-making pie.
I like pie.
One big slice of that pie is the sound recording. That's the master tape, the actual recording of her singing Toxic. That slice is owned by Sony.
Got it. Sony's slice.
Another slice is the composition. That's the actual words and melody, the thing that could be written down on a piece of sheet music. That slice is the publishing.
Okay, so the recording versus the sheet music, basically. That makes sense.
Precisely. Now, artist royalty is the sliver of money Britney gets from Sony's slice every time a song is played or sold based on her contract as the singer. She just has to be the voice on the track to get that.
Okay.
But publishing rights refers to the money you make for writing the song, for coming up with the lyrics and the tune.
Ah, and I see where this is going. Britney is a performer, first and foremost. She's an incredible performer, but she's not known as a singer-songwriter in the way that, say, Bob Dylan or Taylor Swift is.
Exactly. Now, to be fair, she does have songwriting credit. The sources we looked at note she has credits on about 40 songs in her catalog, which is not insignificant.
That's respectable. 40 songs isn't nothing.
It's definitely not nothing, but you have to look at which song. She has co-writing credits on Every Time, which is a beautiful ballad, probably one of her most personal tracks.
I love that.
It's fantastic. She's also credited on Me Against the Music, Work Bitch, but she didn't write the monsters. She wasn't the pen behind Baby One More Time or Oops, I Did It Again or Toxic.
Right, those are the Swedes, right? The legendary Max Martin.
Exactly. Max Martin, Rami Jacob, Dr. Luke back in the day. These are professional hit makers. That's their job.
Yeah.
And they own the lion's share of the publishing, the composition slice of the pie on those massive, massive hits.
So every time Baby One More Time plays on the radio or in a movie, Max Martin and his team get the big writer's check, not Britney.
Britney gets her performer's royalty from Sony's slice, which is still a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But she misses out on that huge, lucrative publishing stream, and that impacts the overall valuation of her catalog significantly.
So suddenly the Bieber comparison makes more sense. He likely has a much larger share of the writing credits on his own hits.
He does, and his catalog is newer, and the deal structures were just different by the time. So if you're an investor, a catalog where the artist is also the primary writer is simply worth more on paper.
So getting $100 million for a catalog where you don't own the masters and you didn't write most of the biggest hits, that actually sounds like a much better deal for her than I thought.
It's actually a very strong number. It really is. It suggests that Primary Waves sees value elsewhere. They aren't just betting on the existing song revenue. They are betting on the brand of Britney.
The cultural longevity.
The longevity, the iconography. They're betting they can keep her relevant for another 50.
Okay, so speaking of the brand, there's another acronym that kept pop that I wanted to ask about. NIL. Name, image, and likeness. I usually hear this when we're talking about college. You know, the quarterback getting paid to be in a video game or on a billboard.
Right, it's the Wild West of the NCAA right now.
Exact. Did she sell her NIL rights in this deal? Like, does Primary Wave own the idea of Britney Spears now? Can they just put her face on a toaster without asking her permission?
That is the billion-dollar question, or perhaps the $100 million question. The sources we looked at strongly suggest it is extremely unlikely that full NIL rights were included in this specific deal.
And why do they say that? Just the price.
It really comes down to the price tag. Britney Spears is one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. If Primary Wave had bought the perpetual rights to her name, her image, and the ability to slap her face on perfume bottles and lunch boxes and whatever else forever, the price would have been exponentially higher than $100 million.
Okay, that makes total sense. I remember reading her perfume line alone has made over $1 billion in gross revenue. You don't sell the golden goose for $100 million.
You absolutely do not. She owns her face. She owns her brand in that sense. However, the source does mention that there are still plenty of ways for her catalog to be exploited without touching the full NIL.
How?
Well, think about the other projects in the works. There is a biopic in development based on her memoir, The Woman in Me, which landed at Universal Pictures.
Right, that book was a massive bestseller.
Huge. And then there's the jukebox music, Once Upon a One More Time, which premiered on Broadway.
So owning the royalties to the songs that will be featured in those projects, still a very, very lucrative investment for Primary.
It's a cash flow machine. They get paid every time that movie plays on cable, every time the curtain goes up on that stage in London or Sydney.
And Primary Wave is good at this, right? They're proactive.
Oh, they are very good at this. They are aggressive marketers. Their job now is to find new ways to place these songs. They will be the ones pitching Toxic for a car commercial or Stronger for a workout app. They're buying the right to hustle those songs so that Britney doesn't have to anymore.
Which brings us to the why. Because this is where it gets really interesting to me. We've established what she sold, basically her passive income stream from the music. But why sell it now? She's Britney Spears. She's not exactly hurting for cash. Or is she?
Well, the sources paint a somewhat complex and maybe a little murky picture regarding her current finance. And it starts with everyone's favorite antagonist, the IRS.
Ah, the tech.
Always. According to the reporting, the IRS has filed a notice claiming Britney is deficient for the 2021 tax year.
Deficient. I love IRS language. It's so polite for pay us immediately or else.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
They are claiming she owes about $600,000 from that year.
Okay, let's keep it real. For you and me, $600,000 is a life-ruining amount of debt. That's sell the house, sell the car, start over from scratch money.
It's a catastrophe.
But for Britney Spears, that feels like couch cushion money. She probably spends that on vacations or clothes in a year. Why is a $600K tax bill a trigger for a $100 million asset?
On its own, it shouldn't be a trigger. But the fact that it's reached this stage where official notices of deficiency are being sent and it's entering the public record, it suggests either a liquidity issue or a cash flow problem. Now, Britney's defense, according to the legal documents that have been filed, is that the IRS just miscalculated. Her team claims she doesn't owe a dime.
The classic celebrity defense. My accountant handled it, and you're wrong.
Right. But one of the sources we reviewed brings up a darker possibility. They discuss what they call the theft narrative. We have to remember the context of the conservatorship.
Of course. We've all heard so many horror stories about that. 13 years of her father and a team of lawyers controlling every single dime. So the theory is that during those years, a significant amount of money was siphoned. Legal fees alone were in the millions. Commissions, management fees, security costs that she was forced to pay. The source speculates that she might be asset-rich paper, but cash poor relative to her fame because so much was drained away. That makes a lot of sense, actually. You can have a net worth of $60 million, but if it's all tied up in real estate and investments and your cash flow has been diverted for a decade, you might not have $600K just sitting in a checking account ready to wire to the IRS.
That's the theory. So selling the rights might be a way to plug that hole. It's a clean slate. You wipe out any potential tax liens, you pay off the lingering legal bills from the conservatorship fight, and you secure your future with a massive pile of liquid cash without ever...
And that leads perfectly into the second source's discuss, the cashing out theory. This one is less about desperation and more about maybe resignation. Or just, plain old retirement.
I think this one has a lot of merit. Think about where she is in her career. She hasn't released a new studio album since Glory back in 2016.
A long time ago now.
A very long time. And she has stated, quite publicly and vehemently, that she will never perform live in the United States again. She hates the industry.
Yeah, she has been crystal clear about that. In her view, the industry is what abused her. It's the source of her trauma.
So if you are truly done, if you never want to engage with that world again, does it make sense to hold on to these rights? If you hold the rights, you have to manage. People are calling you every day. An ad agency in Germany wants to use a song. A movie producer in Hollywood wants to clear a track. You have to approve licenses. You have to be involved in the business of being Britney.
And if your goal is to just go live on a beach and make Instagram videos and spin around in your living room, that administrative burden sounds like an absolute nightmare. You don't want the phone calls.
Precisely. The expert in our source material makes a really good comparison to Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks sold an 80% stake in her catalog to Primary Wave, the same company, back in 2020.
Ah, so they have a history with legacy artists.
They do. And the logic there was, I busted my ass for decades. I built this incredible legacy. Now you take it, you carry the torch, you manage it. I'm going to take the check and go enjoy my life.
It's handing over the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
You drive the car, just give me the cash.
And honestly, for someone like Britney, who has been through so much, that might be the healthiest possible thing for her. Stop the constant requests. Stop the industry nagging at her. Just cash out and be free.
But, and there is always a but, we have to talk about the state of mind debate. The source material spends some time on this, and I want to navigate it carefully because, we are not psychologists here. We're not doctors.
No, absolutely not. We're just reporting on the analysis and the sources.
Right. But the source does point out behavior on media, which has caused a lot of concern.
Yes. The source specifically references the videos that have circulated, the dancing with knives, the erratic posts, the semi-nudity, and they raise a very controversial point that we need to address impartially.
Which is?
They float the idea that perhaps, just perhaps, the conservatorship, despite its obviously restrictive and abusive nature, was serving a purpose when it came to financial safety. It's a tough one. The source argues that her father, for all his many, many faults, might have been doing the right thing in the very narrow sense of keeping the money secure and the taxes paid on time.
That is a tough pill to swallow for the hashtag Free Britney crowd. I mean, that sounds almost like an apology for her dad.
It is an incredibly unpopular opinion, and the source acknowledges that.
Yeah.
But they present it as a counterintuitive take, that now that she is free, she might be mismanaging her assets because she was never taught how, and she simply isn't in a mental state to make these massive long-term financial decisions.
So the question becomes, is she selling because it's a smart, strategic Stevie Nicks move, or is she selling because she needs cash fast and isn't thinking about the long-term ramifications?
That's the debate. It's the tragedy of the whole situation, right? You fight for years to get your freedom, but freedom includes the freedom to make mistakes or the freedom to be vulnerable to bad advice from the people around you.
Exactly. And selling your primary asset, your entire life's work, for a lump sum is a decision you could only make once it's gone, it's gone. You can't unsell the rights of later.
It's a one-way door, and you just have to hope she's being guided by people who truly have her best interests at heart.
But here's the thing that makes me pause on the whole Britney is in trouble narrative. She's not the only one doing this.
Yeah.
If Britney was the only person selling her catalog, we'd say, okay, this is a Britney-specific crisis, but everyone.
Everyone. It is an absolute gold rush. The market is white hot for these catalogs.
I have a list here from the source material, and it's stacked. Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Neil Young, Shakira, Kiss, Sting, Theater, Phil Collins. It's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is having a massive yard sale.
It really is. And the motivations vary from artist to artist, but the trend is undeniable. We talk about Stevie Nicks wanting to simplify her life, but for many of these older artists, it comes down to two very boring.
Let me guess. Tax implications.
Tax implications.
Oh, right. Tax, the most exciting part of rock and roll. But seriously, why does it matter so much?
It matters a huge amount. When you collect royalties every year, that money counts as ordinary income. In the U.S., you're taxed at the highest marginal rate, which is usually around 37% federal, plus whatever your state tax.
So a huge chunk is gone before you even see it.
A huge chunk. But if you sell the entire catalog as a single asset, that transaction is often taxed as capital gains.
Which is a much, much lower tax.
Significantly lower, often around 20%. So for someone like Springsteen or Dylan, who's in their 70s or 80s and is thinking about estate planning and leaving money for their kids and grandkids, the math of taking a massive lump sum at a 20% tax is just mathematically smarter than collecting royalties at a 37%.
So it's not just cashing out, it's smart strategic tax planning. That makes a lot of sense.
It's the responsible financial move for your estate.
But the source makes another great point about inflation that I found really interesting, specifically regarding that Justin Bieber deal.
Yes, this is a crucial economic point that I think a lot of people miss. The $200 million Justin Bieber got a few years ago, that money is worth significantly less.
Because of inflation and the general devaluation of the dollar.
Right. $200 million in 2021 buys you a lot less house or fewer private islands or whatever than it does in 2026. The buying power of that cash has been eroded. So even these massive headline-grabbing numbers can be deceptive. You sell for $200 million, but if the buying power of that money drops by 10 or 15%, just a few, did you actually get the value you thought?
It's a real risk. You sell your legacy, you get a giant pile of cash, and then you have to watch as that pile of money just sort of melts like an ice cube on a hot sidewalk.
That's a terrifying image.
It's the risk of holding cash. Assets like music royalties tend to be inflation resistant because they keep generating new income. If inflation goes up, Spotify raises its subscription prices, ad revenue goes up, and your royalties usually adjust upward with it.
Right.
Cash just sits there and loses value unless you invest it absolutely perfect.
So by selling, you are trading a living, breathing, inflation-proof asset for a melting block of ice.
In a way, yes. You're trading a variable, long-term income stream for a fixed, short-term sum. And this brings us to the most incredible analogy the source used, the one about the city of Chicago, the parking.
Oh, this story.
I had never heard this story before we started this research, and my jaw literally hit the floor.
Oh, this is a classic case study in short-term thinking versus long-term catastrophe. It's infamous in urban planning and public finance.
Break it down for us. What did Chicago do that was so disastrous?
So back in 2008, the city of Chicago was in a massive budget crisis. They needed cash fast. So they came up with this idea to privatize their public parking meters.
Okay.
They sold the rights to all the parking meter revenue in the entire city, consortium of private investors, including Morgan Stanley and, interestingly, some sovereign wealth funds like Abu Dhabi Qatar.
Okay. So they sold the meter for how much money?
They leased the system for 75 years for about $1.16 billion.
$1.16 billion. Okay, that sounds like a lot of money for a city budget. That can plug a lot of holes.
It sounds like it. It's a big headline number, just like Britney's. But here's the catch. The deal was for 75.
75?
Yeah.
That's like 3 generations. That means people not even born yet will be paying parking fees directly to these private investors.
Exactly. And the source notes that the city has, and I'm quoting here, already lost their ass on the Inspector General of Chicago found that the investors made their initial $1 billion back in just a little over a decade.
Wow. They recouped the entire investment in 10 years.
Insanely fast. And now, for the next 60-plus years, every single quarter dropped into a meter in Chicago. Every credit card swipe, every time they hike the rate, which they can do pretty much whenever they want, that money doesn't go to fix pop. It doesn't go to fund schools or libraries.
It goes into the pockets of private investors in New York and the Middle East.
Exactly. The city got a one-time sugar rush of cash, spent it immediately to plug a budget hole from 2008, and now they have zero parking revenue for the rest of the century.
So they traded a permanent, recurring, inflation-proof asset for a temporary pile of cash that's long.
That's it. And the source uses this to explain why selling your catalog can be so dangerous. You are essentially doing the Chicago parking meter deal on your own life. You get the cash now, but you lose the control and the revenue forever.
That's bleak, but it's a perfect analogy. It really signals this huge shift in how we view value as a society. We are prioritizing immediate liquidity cash in hand right now over long-term ownership.
And this isn't just happening with pop stars and parking meters. This is where the deep dive gets really interesting and, frankly, a little dystopian. The source calls it the weather.
Yeah, this is a fascinating cultural observation, specifically coming from the UK, but I think it applies absolutely everywhere now.
So paint the picture for us. What is the weather effect?
Okay, so imagine this. You're traveling. You're in a small, charming town in the English countryside. Cobblestone streets, old buildings, very picturesque. You see a pub on the corner. It's called the Moon and Stars or the King's Head. It looks artisanal, rustic, unique.
A proper local pub.
Exactly. You think, this is great. I'm going to go in, have a pint, and support this lovely local business. You walk in, you sit down, you open the menu.
And you realize it's a Wetherspoon.
You realize it's a Wetherspoon, which is basically a massive, massive conglomerate, right?
Right. J.D. Wetherspoon is a giant pub chain in the UK. They own hundreds and hundreds of locations. But they have this strategy where they don't brand them all as Wetherspoons. They buy up old historic pubs and they keep the old names. They keep the historic facades. So it's a disguise. It's a corporate wolf in a quaint local sheep's clothing.
It's the illusion of choice. You think you are making a conscious decision to engage with something unique and local, but you are actually just feeding a massive, faceless corporate beast.
You think you're supporting a family, but you're supporting a shareholder.
Precisely. And the source compares it to the movie industry as well.
Yeah, how so? That's an interesting parallel.
You see an indie movie label being promoted at Sundance. You think, oh, this is a cool, gritty, independent production. Then you dig a little deeper and you realize that indie label is just a subsidiary, an imprint owned by Disney or Warner Bros.
Right. It's the old Touchstone Pictures model. It looked independent, but it was just Disney making movies for adults.
Exactly. So everything is just a tentacle of the same giant octopus.
That's the feeling, isn't it? It's this sense of massive, relentless consolidation. Microsoft buying up every gaming studio in sight, like Activision Blizzard. Meta buying up Instagram and WhatsApp years ago. The source points out the inevitability of it. If you start a successful company today, the end game is almost always get bought.
Right. The goal isn't to build a company to run for 50 years anymore. The goal is to build it to sell. You want the exit. You want the Britney deal. You want the primary wave check.
In this whole shift, this consolidation, it has an aesthetic cost too. The source makes this really cool point about the Y2K aesthetic, that late 90s, early 2000s look.
Oh, I love that. The sleek silver, the translucent blue plastic on electronics where you could see the wires inside.
Yes. The iMac G3, it was optimistic, it was tech forward, it looked like the future was going to be bright and shiny and cool.
Totally. And you contrast that with today.
The source describes our current reality as depressing and aesthetically dominated by private equity. Everything is gray. Everything is minimalist and everything is streamlined for maximum profit, not for joy or for...
It's the corporate Memphis art style, but for real life.
Yeah.
You know those flat, inoffensive, colorful cartoons? That's our pubs, that's our coffee shops. They're all the same.
It is, but there is a resistance. There are holdouts against this tide of bland.
Yes. The source mentioned one company that just refuses to play this game. And I actually laughed out loud when I read it because it's so true and it's so weird. Craigslist, the cockroach of the internet. And I mean that as the highest possible compliment.
It is the ultimate outlier. The source has the numbers. They make around $600 million a year in revenue. With 30 or 50 employees? It's an insane ratio.
Roughly 50 employees, yes.
Yeah.
The efficiency is just incredible. And the site, the website looks exactly the same as it did in 1999.
It is objectively ugly. It's just blue HTML links on a plain white background. It's a relic.
but it works perfectly. It does exactly what it's supposed to do.
And they refuse to sell. They refuse to modernize just for the sake of looking corporate. They refuse to introduce creepy algorithms that track your every move and try to sell you stuff.
They just exist. And the source had this funny tangent. They were saying, if you really want a job, skip LinkedIn. Skip the endless applications and the ghost listing and the weird personality tests.
Right, the ghost listings. Jobs that don't really exist or are already filled, but they're posted just so the company can harvest resumes and data.
Exactly. The source says, just go to Craigslist.
And it reveals something so deep about this ownership conversation. LinkedIn is the Weatherspoon of job hunt. It's slick, it's corporate, but it's full of friction and fake opportunity.
Whereas Craigslist is raw, immediate ownership of a transaction. I need a guy to paint a fence. You're a person who paints fences. Come paint my fence. Here is cash.
Start immediately.
Exactly. And the source jokes that if a job posting says start immediately, you know you are cooked, meaning it's probably a terrible hard labor job, but at least it's real.
At least it's an honest transaction between two people, not a corporate algorithm filtering you out because you didn't use the right buzzwords in your resume.
I just love that we are holding up Craigslist as the last bastion of authenticity in the digital world. But it really does highlight how rare that model is becoming. Because usually, when private equity gets involved in everyday life, things get weird.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final story in our stack today. And honestly, this one made my blood boil.
The hockey rink story.
Yes. This, for me, this is the climax of the entire deep dive. It connects Britney, the parking meters, and the faceless corporations right into your Saturday morning family routine.
Okay, so set the scene. What happened here?
So, here is the scenario that the source lays out. A private equity firm decided to start buying up local youth hockey rinks.
Okay, a classic roll-up strategy. We see this with veterinary clinics, dental practices, car washes, and now youth hockey rinks. Buy them all up. Centralized management, cut costs, raise price.
But here's the new monetization strategy they implemented, the new twist. They installed automated camera systems in all the rinks, and then they banned parents from filming their own children.
Wait, just pause on that for a second.
Yeah.
You are a parent. You are sitting in the freezing cold bleachers at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Your kid is on the ice. You pull out your phone to film a breakaway or a great save, and you were told you can't.
You were told to put the phone away.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to watch the game, or more importantly, if you want a recording of the game, you must subscribe to their proprietary streaming service.
That's evil. I mean, that is cartoon villain stuff. That's Mr. Burns level evil.
It's so predatory. The source talks about the grift of it all. It's specifically designed to take advantage of parents who can't be there. Maybe dad is on a business trip. Maybe mom is working a weekend shift. They have to subscribe to see their kid play hockey.
And even if you are there, you can't capture the memory yourself. You don't own the memory of your child scoring their first goal. The private equity firm owns it, and they will lease it back to you for $9.99 a month.
This is the synthesis of everything we've talked about today. Britney selling her rights means she trades ownership of her work for cash. Chicago selling the meters means the city trades ownership of public assets for cash. But the hockey, he didn't sell anything. His ownership of his own life experience, of his own family's memories, was stripped away from him and then sold back to him as a servant.
That is a chilling distinction. Britney had a choice. The city of Chicago had, even if it was a bad one. The hockey parent has no.
It's the enclosure of common life. Things that used to just be yours by default. Your local pub, your ability to film your kid in a public space are being fenced off and monetized.
The source was pretty fired up about this. I think they said they would want to start a kerfuffle if some security guard told them they couldn't film a kid.
And rightly so. It's such a visceral reaction to losing agency. I think we're willing to tolerate a lot of this corporate consolidation in the background, but when you tell a parent they don't own the image of their own child in that moment, that crosses the fundamental line.
It really does. So let's try to wrap our heads around. We started this whole conversation with Britney Spears selling her music catalog for $100 million. We ended with a dad being banned from filming hockey. What is the thread that ties all?
The thread is the erosion of individual ownership. We are transitioning very rapidly into an economy where individuals own less and less, and large corporate aggregators, primary wave, investors buying parking meters, private equity firms buying hockey rinks, own more and more.
It's the subscription. You will own nothing and be happy, as it goes.
It really is. You don't own the music, you stream it from Spotify. You don't own the software, you subscribe to Adobe Creative Cloud. You don't own the pub on the corner, it's a Weatherspoon. And now, you don't even own the video of your kid's game, you pay for access to it.
And the big question is this sustainable? Can we keep selling off the parking meters of our lives, big and small?
Well, if you look at Chicago, they lost their ass. That suggests that while the cash up front feels good, the long-term cost of losing control, of losing that recurring value, is absolutely devastating.
Wow. Okay, that is a lot to process. I think I'm going to look at my local coffee shop a little differently tomorrow morning. I'm going to be checking the fine print on the menu for a corporate logo.
You should. You should check if it's a Weatherspoon.
Or a Starbucks that's just pretending to be a quaint little local spot.
Okay, here's my final thought for you. Something to chew on that we haven't explicitly said but is lurking under. If even Britney, one of the most famous, successful, wealthy human beings on the planet, is ultimately treated just as an asset, a line item on a spread, and if your local pub is just a rounding error for some conglomerate in another country, what is actually yours?
That is the question, isn't it?
What can you point to in your life and say, this is mine, and no one can take this from me and sell access to it back?
It's getting harder and harder to answer that question every single day.
It really is. On that cheerful note, seriously though, thank you for listening. This was a deep dive into the machinery of modern ownership. Go support a real local business today, or I don't know, go paint a fence for someone on Craigslist.
Keep it real.
Catch you on the next.
See you then.